A young woman, out of place and exhausted, commits the ultimate taboo during her pack's most sacred ceremony. As the chosen candidates vie for the alpha's attention, she does the unthinkable. She falls asleep in his arms. Everyone expected fury. They anticipated banishment, or worse. But his reaction shocked the entire pack and shattered centuries of tradition. What happens when the most powerful man in the room chooses compassion over ceremony? Get ready for a story that challenges the very meaning of strength and destiny. Before we witness this incredible defiance of tradition, make sure to subscribe to the channel, like this video, and turn on notifications. This helps us bring more inspiring stories like this to you every week. The weary Omega. The air in the sacred grove was thick with the scent of pine, night-blooming jasmine, and raw, untamed power. Torches cast flickering shadows on the ancient redwood trees, their flames dancing in rhythm with the pounding drums. Dozens of pack members formed a wide circle, their eyes glowing with anticipation in the moonlight. This was the mating ritual, the most pivotal night for the Silvermane pack. At the center stood Alpha Kalen, a mountain of a man at 28. His broad shoulders were tense under his ceremonial leathers, his jaw set in a stern line. His ice-blue eyes scanned the circle of hopeful she-wolves who had entered the ritual. They were all strong, fierce, beautiful, perfect candidates for Aluna. They moved with a calculated grace, each step, each glance designed to capture his attention and prove their worth. And then there was Alara, 22 years old, an Omega with no family name to offer. She stood at the very edge of the circle. Her role wasn't to compete, it was to serve. 4 weeks, she had been preparing the grove, arranging the offerings, and tending to the needs of the candidates, all while battling a relentless fatigue she couldn't explain. Her simple gray dress was a stark contrast to the elaborate gowns of the others. She was invisible, a ghost in the machinery of tradition. The ritual began. One by one, the chosen women approached Alpha Kalen, presenting their strengths, a display of speed, a show of strategic knowledge, a demonstration of healing herbs. Kalen observed them all with a detached, analytical coolness, as was expected. Tradition demanded he choose the strongest, the one who would best complement his power. Alara's task was to replenish the ceremonial chalices with spiced wine. As she moved quietly along the inner edge of a circle, her vision began to swim. The drumbeats pounded in her skull, syncing with her erratic heartbeat. The world tilted. The last thing she saw was the ground rushing up to meet her before everything went black. A collective, sharp gasp echoed through the grove. The music stopped. Alara had not hit the hard earth. In a blur of motion faster than any eye could track, Alpha Kalen had broken from the ritual's center and caught her mere inches from the ground. Silence. Absolute, deafening silence. The Alpha, in the middle of the sacred selection, was now holding the unconscious Omega in his arms. Murmurs of shock and disapproval rippled through the crowd. This was a profound breach of protocol. Kalen looked down at the young woman in his arms. Her face was pale, dark circles under her eyes, her breathing shallow. She was feather-light, and in her unconscious state, she instinctively curled into his chest, seeking warmth. A deep, unexpected urge to protect her surged through him, a feeling far more primal and immediate than any ritualistic duty. Ignoring the stunned stares of his pack, he did the one thing no alpha had ever done. He sat down on the ceremonial stone dais, cradling the unconscious Alara in his strong arms, and let her sleep. A defiant peace. The silence in the sacred grove was no longer just shocked. It was loaded with tension, thick enough to choke on. Beta Marcus, Kalen's second in command and the strictest traditionalist, took a step forward, his face a mask of disbelief. Alpha! Marcus's voice was a low, urgent growl, meant for Kalen's ears alone. The ritual. You must put her down. This is unprecedented. Kalen didn't look up. His gaze was fixed on Alara's face. In sleep, the lines of weariness smoothed out, and she looked heartbreakingly young and peaceful. A stark contrast to the calculated, sharp expressions of the candidates who now watched, their hopes turning to confusion and jealousy. The ritual is suspended, Kalen said, his voice a quiet rumble that carried absolute authority across the silent clearing. Suspended? For an Omega, one of the candidates, a fierce brunette named Celine, spat out the word like a curse. My Alpha, this is an insult to every wolf who has entered the circle. To our traditions. A few murmurs of agreement rose from her family's faction. This was the conflict Kaelin had dreaded. Not an external threat, but an internal schism fueled by rigid customs. Kaelin finally lifted his head, and his ice-blue eyes glowed with a faint, dangerous light. The air around him crackled with his suppressed power. The strength of a pack is not in its blind adherence to ritual, he stated, his voice cutting through the dissent. It is in how it protects its weakest member. Look at her. She is not lazy or disrespectful. She is ill, and she worked herself to collapse serving us. Where is the strength in ignoring that? His words hung in the air, challenging centuries of dogma. Marcus looked stricken, his loyalty to his Alpha warring with his devotion to tradition. As the pack absorbed his words, a low, soft whimper escaped Alara's lips. Her eyelids fluttered. Consciousness was slowly returning. Panic seized her before she even fully awoke. The last thing she remembered was falling. The familiar sense of the grove, the torch smoke, and something else. Something incredibly calming and powerful. Sandalwood and frost. Her eyes snapped open, and she found herself staring up at the sharp, handsome, and utterly terrifying face of Alpha Kaelin. And she was in his lap, cradled against his chest. Pure, unadulterated terror shot through her. She tried to scramble away, her movements clumsy with fear. Alpha! I am so sorry. I didn't mean to, please. Forgive my transgression. Her voice was a trembling whisper. Kaelin's arms, which had been a gentle cage, loosened immediately, allowing her to sit up, though he kept a steadying hand on her back. Be still, he commanded, but his tone was not harsh. It was gentle. You fainted. You are unwell. Ilara's heart hammered against her ribs. The entire pack was staring at her. Their eyes weren't just curious, they were accusing. She had disrupted everything. She had humiliated her Alpha. She wanted the earth to swallow her whole. I'm fine. It was just tiredness. I apologize for the disruption, she stammered, trying to stand on wobbly legs. Kaelin's hand on her back was the only thing keeping her upright. He studied her face, seeing not just the fear, but the deep-seated exhaustion she tried to hide. He saw the truth she was too afraid to voice. This was more than simple tiredness, and in that moment, Alpha Kaelin made a decision that would change everything. The ritual was not just suspended, it was over. The mating ritual is concluded, he announced, his voice echoing with finality. He rose, effortlessly bringing Alara to her feet with him, his arm a firm support. There will be no Luna chosen tonight. The gasps this time were louder, filled with outrage. But before anyone could protest, Kaelin spoke again, his next words sending a seismic shock through the entire pack. Ilara is coming with me. The Alpha's care. Ignoring the uproar his declaration caused, Alpha Kaelin guided a trembling Ilara through the stunned crowd. His expression was an unreadable mask of authority, a silent command for everyone to stay out of his way. Whispers erupted like wildfire in their wake, theories and accusations already beginning to spread. He didn't lead her toward the Omega quarters, but toward his own private residence, a large, elegant lodge that stood separate from the main pack buildings, signifying his status. Each step felt like a mile to Alara, her legs still weak, her mind reeling. What was happening? Why wasn't he punishing her? Why was he bringing her here? He pushed the heavy oak door open and guided her inside. The space was masculine and clean, dominated by a large stone fireplace. It was warm, quiet, and felt incredibly isolating. The moment the door closed, shutting out the pack and their judging eyes, Alara flinched, expecting his anger to finally be unleashed in private. Instead, Kaelin led her to a large, plush armchair by the dormant fireplace and gently urged her to sit. Stay, he said, the simple word, leaving no room for argument. He moved away, and Alara sat rigidly, her hands clenched in her lap, preparing for the worst. She watched him, confused, as he went not to a desk to write a decree of banishment, but to his kitchen. She heard the sound of water running, a kettle being filled, the clink of ceramic. He returned a few minutes later with a steaming mug. He knelt before her, placing the mug in her hands. The scent of chamomile, honey, and lemon wafted up. It was a simple, soothing tea. "Drink," he instructed, his voice softer now, devoid of its commanding edge. "It will help with the shock." Elara stared at the mug, then at him, completely bewildered. "Alpha, I don't understand. The ritual. I ruined it. You should be furious." Kalen remained kneeling, his gaze intense but not unkind. "A ritual that ignores the well-being of its own pack members is a ritual that has lost its meaning," he stated. "Now tell me the truth. This tiredness, how long has this been going on?" His direct question, coupled with his unexpected kindness, broke down the last of her defenses. A tear escaped and traced a path down her cheek. "Weeks," she admitted, her voice barely audible. "I get dizzy. My energy just drains away for no reason. I thought I could push through it. I didn't want to be seen as weak." Kalen listened, his expression grim. "You are not weak. You are unwell, and you will see the pack physician first thing in the morning." It was not a suggestion. It was an order, but one wrapped in concern. As Elara sipped the tea, the warmth spreading through her, a strange feeling settled over her. For the first time in her life, as an Omega, someone in a position of power saw her. Not her status, not her utility, but her. And he had defied his entire world for her. Later, he showed her to a guest room. "You will sleep here tonight. You need proper rest, not a cot in a noisy dormitory." Elara stood in the doorway of the luxurious room, overwhelmed. "Alpha, thank you. For everything. But your pack, they won't accept this." "Beta Marcus." Kalen's jaw tightened. "I am their Alpha. My first duty is to the pack's well-being, and that includes yours. Let me worry about Marcus and the others." He turned to leave, but paused. "Sleep, Elara. You are safe here." He closed the door, leaving her alone in the quiet room. Elara sank onto the bed, her mind a whirlwind of fear, gratitude, and a terrifying, budding hope. Outside, she could hear the distant, angry howl of a wolf. The pack was restless. The Alpha's defiance had started a storm, and she was trapped at the very center of it. The pack's fury, the howl that pierced the night, was not one of unity, but of dissent. It was followed by another, and then another, creating a dissonant chorus that made the hairs on Elara's arms stand up. Safe within the Alpha's lodge, she still felt the vibration of their anger through the pack bonds, a low, simmering fury that was directed at her and, unthinkably, at Kalen. Sleep was impossible. She lay in the foreign bed, staring at the ceiling, every muscle tense. The luxury of the room felt like a gilded cage. She was a problem, a catalyst for chaos. Downstairs, she heard the front door open and the low, furious murmur of Beta Marcus's voice. He had come. The confrontation she dreaded was happening. "Have you lost your mind, Kalen?" Marcus's voice was a harsh whisper, trying to maintain respect but failing to mask his outrage. "You humiliated every worthy she-wolf, dishonored our traditions, and for what? An Omega who couldn't be bothered to get enough sleep." Elara crept to the top of the stairs, staying hidden in the shadows, her heart pounding. She heard Kalen's calm, steady reply. "I honored a pack member who sacrificed her health for a ceremony that would have discarded her without a second thought. That is not strength, Marcus. That is cruelty. It is order." Marcus shot back. "The Omegas have their place, just as the Betas and the Alpha have theirs. You blurred the lines tonight, and now the pack is divided. Celine's family is talking of challenging your leadership. They say you are weak, that you're unfit to lead if your judgment is so clouded by whatever this is." He practically spat the words. There was a long, heavy silence. Elara held her breath. "Let them challenge me!" Kalen's voice was dangerously quiet, a low growl lacing his words. "My strength is not defined by who stands beside me as a Luna, but by how I choose to use my power. And I choose to use it to protect, not to perpetuate blind tradition. If they see that as weakness, then they are welcome to try and take my place." The sheer, unwavering confidence in his voice was awe-inspiring. He was not afraid of a challenge. He was afraid of becoming a leader who didn't deserve his title. "And what of the girl?" Marcus asked, his tone shifting from anger to wary confusion. "What is your plan for her? You cannot keep her here. It's improper. It sends the wrong message. The message it sends is that your Alpha cares for the well-being of all his pack members," Kaylin countered. She stays under my protection until the physician clears her. That is the end of it. Marcus left shortly after, the tension unresolved. The lodge fell silent again, but the weight of the outside conflict pressed in. Ilara understood the magnitude of what Kaylin was risking, his leadership, the stability of the pack, his reputation, all for her. The next morning, true to his word, Kaylin summoned the pack physician, an older, kind-eyed man named Dr. Evans. He examined Ilara in the guest room while Kaylin waited outside, a silent, imposing sentinel. Dr. Evans asked gentle questions, checked her vitals, and finally sat back, a thoughtful frown on his face. Ilara, your fatigue, the dizziness, it's not an illness, he said softly. Ilara's blood ran cold. Was he saying it was all in her head? That she was a fraud? It's a latent genetic manifestation, he continued. Very rare, especially in omegas. Your body isn't weak, it's changing. It's trying to accommodate a new ability. Ilara stared at him, utterly confused. A new ability? What are you talking about? Dr. Evans smiled gently. I believe your body is channeling energy, trying to develop a gift. A healing gift. It's draining your own energy reserves in the process, which is why you're so exhausted. It's why you collapsed. The revelation hit her like a physical blow. She wasn't weak. She was gifted, an omega with an alpha-like ability. It made no sense. It defied all nature, all tradition. Dr. Evans left to explain his findings to Kaylin. Ilara remained seated on the bed, her world turned upside down for the second time in 24 hours. She wasn't just a problem, she was an anomaly, a violation of the natural order the pack held so dear. And the alpha defending her was now defending something that threatened their very understanding of the world. A new tradition. Dr. Evans's diagnosis hung in the air between them, a truth more disruptive than any scandal. An omega with a latent healing gift was unheard of, a paradox that shattered the pack's rigid hierarchy. Kaylin absorbed the information with a calm that surprised even himself. He looked at Ilara, who seemed smaller than ever, drowning in the implications of her own biology. She wasn't just fearing banishment now, she was fearing what she was becoming. This changes nothing, Kaylin stated, his voice firm, anchoring her to the present. You are still under my protection, but it changes everything. Ilara cried, her voice trembling with a new kind of fear. I'm an omega with an alpha's gift. The pack will see me as a monster, an abomination. They will never accept this. Beta Marcus was right. I'm causing your ruin. Before Kaylin could respond, a frantic pounding echoed on the lodge door. A young beta warrior, his face pale with panic, stood breathless on the doorstep. Alpha, come quickly. It's Beta Marcus's son, Leo. He was training a fall from the cliffside path. He's badly hurt. The physician is already there, but it's bad. Kaylin's face hardened. He was immediately in command mode. Take me to him. He shot a glance at Ilara. Stay here. But as he turned to leave, Ilara felt a strange, irresistible pull. A surge of energy, faint but persistent, buzzed beneath her skin. It was as if the boy's pain was a beacon, and her new, confusing ability was a compass needle swinging wildly toward it. No, she said, the word coming out stronger than she felt. Kaylin stopped and looked back at her, surprised. Take me with you, Ilara said, her voice gaining strength with a conviction she didn't know she possessed. Please, let me try. The risk was immense. If she failed, if she made things worse, it would confirm everyone's worst fears about her and destroy any last shred of Kaylin's credibility. But if she could help, it could be the first step toward a new understanding. After a tense second, Kaylin gave a sharp nod. All right, come on. They arrived at the base of the cliff to a grim scene. A small crowd had gathered around where young Leo lay moaning in pain, his leg bent at a sickening angle, his face ashen. Dr. Evans was doing his best, but his supplies were limited. Celine and her faction stood to the side, their expressions a mixture of worry and judgment. Beta Marcus was kneeling beside his son, his face a tortured mask of fear and helplessness. When the crowd parted for Kaylin, a wave of hope went through them. But when they saw Ilara following him, that hope turned to confusion and murmurs of disapproval. What is she doing here? Celine hissed. Kaylin ignored her. He looked at Alara and gave her a single, encouraging nod. Alara's hands were shaking as she knelt beside Leo, opposite his terrified father. She ignored the hostile stares, focusing only on the boy's pain. She closed her eyes, not knowing what she was doing, only following the instinctual pull. She placed her hands gently over his broken leg. A warm, golden light, faint at first, then brighter, emanated from her palms. A collective gasp rippled through the crowd. Leo's cries of pain softened into whimpers, then ceased altogether. The terrible pallor left his face, replaced by a healthy flush. The bones, visible under the skin, seemed to shift and knit back together under the glow of her hands. When the light faded, Alara swayed, utterly drained. Kalen was instantly there, his hand on her shoulder, steadying her. Leo blinked, then slowly, hesitantly moved his leg. It was straight, whole. He looked up at Alara, his eyes wide with awe. You fixed it," he whispered. "It doesn't hurt anymore." The silence that followed was profound. It wasn't filled with anger or fear, but with wonder. Beta Marcus stared from his healed son to the exhausted Omega who had saved him. The conflict in his eyes, tradition versus undeniable truth, raged for a long moment. Finally, it softened into something entirely new, respect. He bowed his head to Alara, a deep, traditional sign of acknowledgement usually reserved for alphas. "Thank you," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "Thank you for saving my boy." The gesture was more powerful than any decree. The pack watched, their worldview shifting in real time. Kalen helped Alara to her feet, facing his pack. "The old traditions taught us to value strength above all else." His voice rang out, clear and strong. "But today, a different kind of strength saved one of our own. Not the strength of a warrior, but the strength of a healer, of a heart that cares. This is our new way forward, not by discarding our past, but by embracing a fuller truth." He looked down at Alara, who leaned against him, not out of weakness, but in partnership. "Strength is not about where you are born in the pack," he said, his words meant for her alone, but heard by all. "It is about the power you choose to wield. And you, Alara, are the strongest of us all." As the pack began to disperse, their murmurs now filled with awe and acceptance instead of anger, Kalen led Alara away. The path ahead wouldn't be perfectly smooth, but a new tradition had been born in the sacred grove, not of ritual and judgment, but of compassion, defiance, and the incredible power of an unexpected connection. They walked forward, together, into a new dawn for their pack.